What's up, guys? Sir Culture Freak here, and this is the first video of the new channel. Woohoo! And because it's the first video, I decided to go with something that's a little light, not controversial, to an extent, and is sort of beating a dead horse. This subject has been talked about endlessly. This is more of a kind of experiment to see exactly how I'm going to do these videos and blah blah blah. But that does not mean that I do not want your participation. After you're watching this video, if you have a thought, comments are welcome, video responses are preferred. That is the tagline. Hell yeah. I think it's a good tagline. I think it's awesome. Anyway, as you can plainly see, we're here to talk about the idea of utopia and the idea of the perfect society, something that humans have been thinking about for centuries, absolute centuries. Now, the definition of that perfect society varies from person to person, obviously. Me personally, I got into this idea through reading the Communist Manifesto, and while it's not explicitly stated really in the manifesto, the idea of a working class utopia is present, and that's really what got me into this idea of the perfect society. And there are, again, like I said, varies from person to person, and there are different roots and ideas on what a utopia can be. But the problem with any utopia, the main problem with any utopia is the idea of the utopia, this general consensus, this perfect society versus individuality. And the fact is that humans are so varied that not all of them can fit into one perfect society. Therefore, if you have a utopia, it in effect deletes individuality. You have all these people that share a common goal, that share a common thought, and yes, those people in that society are individuals and they have their own thoughts and ideas, but to an extent they fit into a formula, into the mold of the utopia, and people that are outside of that, people who are individuals from that idea of utopia, are not welcome, are not allowed in, cannot exist in that society for it to be a perfect society. And really this argument, I think, is best illustrated by Isaac Asimov, which is one of my favorite, probably my favorite science fiction author, and he did a series of books called the Foundation novels. There are two books, Foundation's Edge and Foundation and Earth, which deal with this idea of utopia, and he brings it in through a world called Gaia. And if you haven't read the books, Gaia is a superorganism. Every organism on the planet shares a consciousness. Every organism on the planet is part of each other. It is a perfect utopia. It is not the perfect utopia, but it is an example of what a perfect utopia can be. And there's an exchange that I just picked this book up, actually. Again, this is the third time that I've read it, Foundation and Earth. And there's an exchange in here that I think is fucking awesome, and I want to read it to you guys because I think it perfectly illustrates the argument between the two sides. I gotta find my place. So they're talking about, yeah, so at the beginning they're talking about the analogy that with a utopia people are molded to fit the society rather than the society being molded to fit the person, and they're using the analogy of a house or a ship. And the main character, Travis, says, what's wrong with that is that my house or my ship is engineered to suit me. I am not engineered to suit it. If I were part of Gaia, this superconscious utopia, then no matter how ideally the planet was devised to suit me, I would be greatly disturbed over the fact that I was also being devised to suit it. There is that argument of what place does individuality have in a perfect society. And he's arguing with his friend Pellerat. Pellerat goes on to say, one could argue that every society molds its population to fit itself. Customs develop that make sense within the society and that chain every individual firmly to its needs. Travis says, in the societies I know, one can revolt. There are eccentrics, even criminals. And this is where it gets interesting. His friend Pellerat responds, do you want eccentrics and criminals. And Travis says, why not? You and I are eccentrics. We're certainly, blah, that's not important. As for criminals, that's a matter of definition. And if criminals are the price we must pay for rebels, heretics, and geniuses, I'm willing to pay it. I demand the price to be paid. Pellerat goes on to say, you can't have geniuses and saints without having people far outside the norm. And I don't see how you can have such things on only one side of the norm. There is bound to be... Oh, I'm sorry. Pellerat says, are criminals the only possible payment? Can't you have geniuses without criminals? Treviz says, can't have geniuses and states without having people far outside the norm. And I don't see how you can have such things on only one side of the norm. There is bound to be a certain symmetry. So this really is the gist of the argument for me. Within a perfect society, there is no idea of individuality. There is no dissent. There is no thinking outside the box. You cannot, it is, for the society to exist, you cannot have total free thought, because that could lead to possible dissenting ideas, possible revolt, therefore the destruction of the society. But this point that is continued throughout the book is in an individual society, a society where the individual is valued over the greater whole to a certain extent. You have things such as criminals, but you also have things such as saints. You have, people who are maybe not as bright as others, and then you have geniuses. You have variation, and really Utopia kind of strikes the middle of the road, supposedly. And what place does individuality have in a perfect society? And that's my question to you. How can you resolve the idea of a perfect society with the idea of individuality? How can those two mesh in your opinion? In my opinion, they don't. You have to have a perfect society. You must be willing to give up a portion of your individuality. Now, that is a personal choice, which is the great thing about the human idea of utopia, is that individuality comes into play with the creation of the utopia. You make that decision to be part of that society. You're not really cutting out your individuality. It's already something that you believe in. But the fact is that this utopia cannot be spread over a large amount of people, and you can't have people, you can't have dissidence in it. It is impossible for there to be dissidence. So that's my question to you. How do you resolve the problem of individuality within the idea of a utopia that is a perfect society? And of course, if you think my argument was bad, or you have some problem with my ideas, by all means tell me I'm wrong. And as always, comments are welcome. Video responses are preferred. So, Sir Culture Freak, I'll see you guys later.